You didn't stumble upon this video by chance. There is something within you that led you here at this exact moment. And as you watch until the end, you'll understand why. There are times you don't know how, but you've always made it. You've navigated through moments that felt like the absolute end. Situations that could have shattered anyone, yet there was something. A feeling, a coincidence, a silent presence that held you up just when you were about to let go. That wasn't luck, nor was it randomness. It was something you couldn't see, but that you could feel. A higher force that doesn't need to prove itself, but simply shows up with undeniable precision. It doesn't arrive with noise. It comes subtly through fleeting, delicate interventions that you don't recognize at the time. But later, looking back, everything becomes clear. And when you look back, you realize you were never alone. The first sign. You were once on the verge of a decision that would have changed everything. And at the very last second, something held you back. You didn't know the reason. You simply felt it. An inner impulse told you not to go, not to speak, not to sign. A shapeless voice infiltrated your chest and stopped your steps. Time later revealed that what seemed like an opportunity was a trap. What looked like progress was a path not meant for you. You were saved not by logic, but by guidance. Those subtle interventions have always been present in your life, even if you didn't always notice them. You chose a path without understanding why it was so appealing to you. And that path led you precisely to the right person, the right message, the right moment you needed. It's not a predictable plan, but it's perfect, because the force that protects you doesn't need to explain itself. It only asks you to trust what is unseen, but is holding you up. The more you acknowledge those moments, the clearer that presence becomes. It's as if your recognition reinforces it, as if, by accepting that not everything is up to you, that power is allowed to act more clearly. You no longer question why you feel these things. You don't need everything to make sense immediately, because you have witnessed time and again that what seemed nonsensical was surprisingly precise. Your protection isn't loud, it's silent. It doesn't prevent you from experiencing pain, but it keeps you from getting lost in it. It doesn't erase the challenge, but it softens the falls. It doesn't eliminate the lesson, but it prevents you from completely breaking. And even if no one else sees it, you know it well, because you felt it more than once. You also begin to realize that you don't have to be in danger to feel this presence. Sometimes it shows up in everyday life. When you doubt, an external sign confirms what you're feeling. When unnamed sadness hits, a song, a phrase, a fleeting glance appears to soothe you without permission. These coincidences aren't random. They are a subtle way of saying, I am here. You don't need to understand how it works. Simply acknowledging it is enough. You begin to trust the invisible more than the predictable. A feeling that you are not shouldering the burden alone. That something, call it what you will, is walking beside you even when you can't feel it. That faith doesn't come from books or inherited beliefs. It comes from experience, from looking back and realizing how many times things almost went wrong, but they didn't. From remembering your most fragile moments, something moved in your favor without you needing to intervene. This protection is also present when you make a choice without knowing the reason. But it turns out to be exactly what you needed. Not because you knew the outcome, but because you felt that guiding force placing you in the right place with the right person at the right time. And even if no one else understands, you know you have been held, protected, and guided, no matter how lost you sometimes felt. Because that power doesn't depend on your clarity. Even when you don't know how to move forward, it has already cleared the path. Not to prevent falls, but so you learn without getting lost. Not to avoid pain, but so you overcome without breaking. That is true protection, the kind that doesn't cancel the process, but prevents it from destroying you. The kind that doesn't impose, but whispers. The kind that demands nothing, but is always present. The second sign. When everything seems to be collapsing, a sudden peace appears. A peace that doesn't come from you. You are in the middle of chaos, without answers, without control, without direction. And suddenly, something settles within you. It doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't erase the pain. But it holds you up, as if an invisible presence placed a hand on your chest and silently whispered, "This too shall pass." This peace is not a rationalization, not an idea that calms you. It is a vibration, an energy that wraps around you from the inside out without effort. You don't create it, you don't search for it, but it arrives. And from that moment, everything shifts. Not because the external stabilizes, but because you stop resisting. And that is enough. That peace has no logical explanation, and it truly doesn't come from positive thinking or a conscious decision. It's as if, in the middle of the storm, something in you opens to a different frequency. As if despair is interrupted by a presence you don't see, but feel with an unforgettable gentleness. That feeling is not random. It is an act of silent protection. And you realize it because it is not your strength holding you up, but something greater. You have been in situations where everything indicated you were about to break. Yet that peace appeared like an invisible shelter. It doesn't push you. It doesn't force you to move forward. It simply holds you while everything rearranges within you. It's one of the purest signs that you are protected. When the mind screams and the body trembles, there is still an untouched space where you can rest. You didn't build it. It was always there. And when you feel it, you know you are not alone. With time, you learn to trust that space. You cannot summon it by will, but you know it appears just when you are about to give up. Sometimes you don't feel it immediately, but afterward, you realize that moment of tranquility prevented you from making a decision out of fear. That peace is like a curtain between you and the abyss. Not a denial, but a reminder that you can look down without falling, that there is something covering you even when you feel completely exposed. Even if the outside world doesn't recognize it, you know how to differentiate between self-created peace and peace that is granted. Self-created peace comes from control. Granted peace comes from the soul. It doesn't ask you to understand, only to receive it. Sometimes it comes through a deep breath you didn't know you needed. Other times, through a moment of complete presence, where everything inside stops. Even as the external noise persists, you are elsewhere, in a place where there is no fear, no expectation, no running, only a gentle certainty that everything is being held. You learn that you don't have to earn that state because it doesn't depend on you. It depends on the power that answers when you are most fragile. It doesn't show up to prove its strength, but to bring you back to your center. And every time you feel it, something in you rearranges. You don't wake up with the answer, but with peace. And that peace is not a reward. It's a reminder. You are not alone. Never have been. You also realize that this peace doesn't only come when you are on the brink, but sometimes before you even realize what is about to happen. It's as if something knows you're going to go through it before you do. Sometimes you wake up with a strange serenity, an inner rest whose origin you don't know. And only later do you understand that this state was necessary to face what was coming. It's as if life anticipates your exhaustion and offers a shelter so you can stay with yourself. Even if everything around you is surging, that peace is neither emotional nor physical. It's deeper. It's vibrational. You don't need quiet to feel it. In fact, you often feel it in the middle of tears, frustration, anger, and pain. It's as if the pain doesn't erase that presence, but makes it clearer. It's as if, when you fully let go, no mask, no defense, something descends and wraps around everything. Not a solution, but a hug that demands nothing in return. You begin to recognize that peace as a visitation, as if a wiser, older, more connected part of you steps in to take over. Precisely when you are exhausted, that part doesn't need words. It's not hurried, it's not imposed, it doesn't reason. It simply is. And through its presence, everything calms down. Not because the problem disappears, but because you stop struggling with it. In that space, you stop looking for solutions, and yet things start to arrange themselves naturally. That's not passivity, but harmony. Not resignation, but divine surrender. You learn that that peace is not weakness. It's a reminder that something or someone is holding you up from a place you cannot reach. But you recognize it as more real than anything else. And the more you allow that peace to flow, the easier it is to return to. The third sign. External signs begin to appear as if speaking directly to you. coincidences you can't ignore. Phrases repeated in multiple places. Numbers, symbols, songs, even unexpected encounters that happen just when you're about to give up or make a major decision. While they might be trivial to others, to you, they feel like a personal message, as if something or someone is using the world's language to tell you, you are on the right track. You are not alone. Keep trusting. These signs are not things you ask for or actively seek. They simply show up. They intersect your path with a precision that makes you vibrate. Even if they cannot be explained logically, something within you recognizes them as an answer, a subtle confirmation. That an unseen force is accompanying you, listening and guiding you. With time, you learn to read these signs like a second language, a language that is not taught, but that the soul remembers. You don't need them to be grand. You understand that the message can come through simplicity. A butterfly in the middle of the concrete, a phrase overheard in a strange conversation, an image that appears right after a deep thought. You don't look for the explanation. You feel the vibration, and that is enough. You realize these signs do not decide for you, but they illuminate the path. Sometimes they confirm what you already knew. Other times, they awaken you from a doubt that was weighing you down. And some days, you don't even wait for a sign, but it arrives with a subtlety that makes it seem random. But you know it's not. Because the moment you see or hear it, your body reacts. Something harmonizes, relaxes, activates. Not every sign carries immediate clarity. Some plant a seed that you only understand later. But you learn not to demand that the mystery explain itself right away, because you know that everything will be revealed when you are ready to carry it. The force that protects you doesn't communicate to impress, but to accompany. Those messages are not a demonstration of power, but an act of tenderness. They come when you need them most, even if you don't know it yet. There's no fixed pattern. Sometimes the message comes in a dream, sometimes in your body, sometimes through an animal that crosses your path, or a stranger who says exactly what you needed to hear without knowing it. Each sign carries its own unique, inimitable vibrational frequency. You cannot create it. You can only open yourself to receive it. You stop counting or writing them down because you don't need to convince yourself they are real. You know that these signs have become part of your silent dialogue with the higher power. You don't need rituals. You don't need explanations. Your life is the ritual. Your awareness is the channel. And you are the bridge between the visible and the invisible. And when a day goes by without signs, you don't worry, because you also learn that silence is an answer. Sometimes they don't come because they are not needed, because you are in harmony and the protection doesn't require constant reminders. You trust, and in that trust, the connection deepens. The fourth sign. Your instinct becomes a compass you cannot ignore. You don't need an event to happen to know that a path is not for you. You feel it beforehand, as if a part of you reads the energy of people, decisions, and spaces without effort or analysis. And even if you don't always understand why, you trust it Because every time you follow that deep impulse, everything harmonizes. And every time you ignore it, something becomes complicated. That instinct is not emotional. It's vibrational. It doesn't respond to fear or insecurity. It answers from another place, a place that observes you in silence and speaks without words. You learn to listen to it not through theory, but because life shows you that it is the clearest way. The higher power communicates with you. That instinct doesn't scream, it doesn't demand, it doesn't argue. It appears as a silent certainty, a signal in your body that gently pushes you toward one place and holds you back from another. You don't know where it comes from, but when it arrives, you know you shouldn't ignore it. Because you learn that when something vibrates out of alignment with you, your energy recognizes it before your mind does. That knowing is an act of pure protection, not suspicion or paranoia, but a sensitivity trained by experience that teaches you not to betray yourself. You have been in places where everything seemed fine. Every word was kind and no one was harming you. Yet, something in you was tense. Your body wouldn't relax. Your breathing changed. You don't need proof to believe that feeling, because when you follow it, you save yourself. When you ignore it, you learn. That instinct also guides you to people with whom you feel an immediate, deep connection, with no explanation, as if a part of you recognizes a part of them. It's as if protection doesn't only push you away from what weighs you down, but also pulls you toward what lifts you up. That is not coincidence. It is guidance. And even if you don't understand the reason for every encounter, you know those connections arrive as an answer. Not to what you ask for with words, but to what your soul needs. There are decisions you make without a logical explanation, paths you choose without guarantees, ties you release without drama, and commitments you reject even when everything pushes you toward them. Not because you are impulsive, but because your frequency doesn't compromise with what doesn't resonate. That sudden rejection is also protection, also a sign. Even when you doubt, your instinct is working. Sometimes it's not a clear voice, but a persistent unease, a strange fatigue, a feeling of being out of place. You don't force yourself to stay. You don't rationalize what doesn't feel right, because you learn that your peace is worth more than any explanation. And the more you honor it, the more precise it becomes. You don't need to look for external signs, because protection lives within. It activates in your body, on your skin, in the center of your chest, as a gentle alarm, not of fear, but of truth. And you don't fight that truth anymore, because you see that every time you follow it, something invisible harmonizes with you. You also realize that your instinct is never wrong. Even if it sometimes leads you through uncomfortable paths, it doesn't promise comfort, but authenticity. It doesn't protect you from pain, but from useless waste. Because there is pain that transforms and pain that exhausts. your instinct learns to differentiate. Sometimes when you follow it, those around you don't understand. They ask for reasons, demand explanations. But you know that what is authentic is not always explainable. You don't need to convince anyone when you are at peace with yourself. That protection is strongest when you stop bargaining with your intuition, when you don't ignore it to hold on to something that is already falling apart. You learn that forcing what resonates badly is a betrayal of yourself. And every time you do it, you pay the price in anxiety, fatigue, and that feeling of being in the right place for others, but not for you. That instinct also pushes you away from situations that look ideal from the outside, opportunities everyone else would seize, paths that make sense. But you don't take them. Something in you closes off. You don't know why, but you know it's not the direction. And later, the truth explodes. You understand it wasn't a rejection, but a redirection. The force that protects you doesn't only keep you from obvious danger, but from what moves you away from yourself. Even when you make mistakes, your instinct keeps working. It whispers before, during, and after. Sometimes you don't listen. Sometimes you hear but choose to ignore. Yet that presence doesn't disappear. It doesn't punish. It doesn't withdraw. It just waits. Because true protection is not control, but a loving presence. It lets you fall if you need to learn, but stays close to help you rise. And when you do, you realize that force was there all along. In every choice, every warning, every seemingly irrational impulse that turned out to be the truth. The fifth sign, the open heart. Despite everything you've been through, your heart hasn't closed. You have navigated deep disappointments and losses etched into your soul. Moments where it would have been easy to become hardened, but you didn't. You still feel. You still trust. You still open yourself. Although not as naively as before, you now do it with awareness, with the wisdom of someone who has been wounded but also sheltered. And that, in itself, is an undeniable sign. Because only those who are upheld by the invisible can maintain gentleness in a world that hardens. Your ability to keep your soul open is not naivete. It is spiritual strength. It is living proof that even in the heaviest falls, something held you up from within. You went through shadows that few know about, invisible pains and silent internal battles. Yet you didn't become bitter. You didn't turn pain into an identity. You didn't turn your wounds into a weapon. You could have. You have 1,000 reasons to close the door, to stop trusting, to cut off love. But something in you resists hardening. Something or someone silently reminds you that your soul was born to carry light, not to lock down the darkness. The capacity to keep your heart available even after being broken is a sign of profound protection. Because a sheltered soul is not one that has never been hurt, but one that has been hurt without being distorted. Your sensitivity didn't turn off. Your compassion didn't dry up. and your tenderness wasn't buried under disappointment. And that is not personal merit, but a clear sign that you are held and accompanied by something larger than yourself. That power doesn't shelter you with walls, but with soul memories. Because in the moment everything broke, you remembered, however vaguely, that it was not the end. Something in you said that the wound was not punishment, but part of the process. That the emptiness didn't arrive to destroy, but to release what didn't belong to you. That the solitude was not abandonment, but a call to return to yourself. That silent voice arose when there was nothing left. The presence you don't need to see to know it's there is what keeps you whole. You also feel it in the way you care for others, in the patience you give unconditionally, in the way you look at broken people without judgment, as if you know that no one breaks by choice, because you know what it's like to hold on when no one understands what you're going through. Yet you haven't turned into what hurt you. You haven't retaliated against the darkness, and you haven't repeated what injured you. That kind of strength doesn't come only from you. It is the fruit of being accompanied by an invisible force that doesn't shelter you from pain, but from ceasing to be yourself. You learn that being protected is not about not feeling, but about feeling everything without getting lost. And that is what defines you now, not what you went through, but what you chose to keep after every fall. Your gentleness, your compassion, your sensitivity, your truth, all still intact. It is not the world that protects you, but something else that does so when no one can. And that is one of the clearest signs. You continue to move forward with an open heart, knowing that something is accompanying you, demanding nothing, not punishing, not abandoning, but reminding you at the right time that you are part of something greater. And even as the world weighs heavily, your soul remains connected to a force that asks only one thing. Don't forget yourself. When the higher power protects you, you don't need to see everything clearly to feel safe. You don't need to understand every step to know you are being guided. Because the invisible does not seek to impose, it only accompanies. And you, who learned to recognize its forms, the silence that holds you, the sudden peace, the intuition that saves you without you knowing, are the living proof. You know you are not alone. You are still standing, not because you never fell, but because something in you decided not to give up. And that decision is being upheld by something greater, an energy that doesn't need a name. But you recognize it deep down as the energy that didn't come to save you from pain, but to remind you that even within that pain, you can preserve your truth, your gentleness, your soul. If this message touched something within you, if you feel that every word was meant for you, it's because it was. And if you want to continue receiving messages like these, if you want a space where sensitivity is seen as a strength and not a weakness, subscribe to Soul Wisdom Haven channel. This space vibrates with you. Because you, without knowing it, are also protection for others.